Hi, welcome to Bad Music Taste and Other Ways to Ruin Your Life. My name is Dominic.
And my name is Sam. Dominic has a record this week.
This week's record is Beauty and the Beat by the Go-Go's. This record was first released in 1981, and the copy I have here is an original pressing on black vinyl. Anyways, today we're talking to photographer Kevin Salk. How's it going, Kevin?
It's going well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, right off the bat, how did you first get into punk rock and photography?
I was a 15-year-old kind of juvenile delinquent in Manhattan Beach, or on my way to become a juvenile delinquent, and punk rock kind of came about in the South Bay, which is the home of Black Flag and the Cirque Jerks and the Descendents, and it just kind of happened. Angry kid, alienated, and it was a perfect ingredient. So, did that full on for a number of years, and then for some reason I decided to bring a camera, and it was a point and click first, and then I used a camera when Black Flag played at the Ukrainian Hall. I think it was December of 1983, and it kind of went on there, but a short period of time. It's only 2 years, year and a half.
Oh, okay.
So not too exciting, but the story, as the story goes on, it gets better.
Yeah, we got into it, or at least I did, from the car. Yeah. Like hearing my parents play music from the
there was
the
the big thing out here. It was a big scene. You had Hollywood, you had a number of bands, legendary bands from even before I got in, like the Germs, Black Flag early. Boy, the list is long. So it was the right place where I live in the South Bay, which is just it's a beach community where there was a small group of people that really enjoyed the music, and my mom would drive me down to the record store called Zed Records, and I would use my allowance to buy 45s or buttons or things like that. So I think the idea was, or in hindsight, it was fitting in with the group that didn't fit in, which I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it was, again, my high school at the time was very jock centric, and so it was a good place to be there. Plus, my parents did not like it, which added to the fuel.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. It's just you were surrounded by a group where you felt like you had to fit into it, and you didn't. So it was just like punk was an open group where you didn't necessarily have to fit a certain profile to be part of it,
Yeah, the key thing back then was you had short hair. At least for band members can do what they want, but for people in the scene, short hair was key, whether it was people even skinheads or mohawks or dyed hair. But long hair back then put you in a spot that could be dangerous at a club, because it was very violent. There was no such thing as a mosh pit where they go around in circles. It was a slam pit where it was just full on pounding and chaos and a lot of fights. And so if someone, kind of looked like a hippie came into a club to watch a gig, most of the time the outcome was not good, because no one really thought about things. They just did it. And it was, again, it was scary. I was a little kid. I was kind of skinny, or more like a young teen, but I was skinny, not, didn't have that violent mentality. But it was, I had big friends who were very protective.
Yeah.
So
Glad to say that things have changed now. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm friends with the guys with Jimmy and Fletcher from Pennywise, and they're doing these huge, somewhat huge, 4,000 or 5,000 person events, which is great. They've kind of kept, they've kept going for years after I left the scene in at the end of 1983. And but back when I was growing up, it was small clubs where you'd get a few hundred people. Maybe probably the biggest was maybe, I don't know, probably less than maybe 1,000 or less. So there was an intimacy of going to these small clubs where you just felt everything. You felt the band, you felt the sweat, you felt the crowd. I'd come home, ears ringing for, it was hard to go to sleep because my ears were ringing constantly. I think through most of my high school, my ears were ringing.
Yeah, and I mean now like the Descendents are playing at this huge place. We're going to see them this August, like huge with the.
And that's a great
Rise
thing
Again.
is you're seeing. Yeah, I mean you're seeing. Milo and Bill went to my high school, and you're seeing these older bands now come back. And that's a very cool thing because they still have it. They're still legends and they still make great music. They obviously changed a lot with families, but they're, I don't know if you're going to get that small club focus because, you need to make money and there's a big demand, but I would love to see the Descendents or when the Circle Jerks come out, or even Pennywise in a small club. But I'll go see them. It was as long as I can get backstage and access, then I'll go to clubs. But the venues. The fun thing is though, is parents, people my age. I mean, I have two daughters who are in their early 20s. Kids can go with their parents and see what their parents were into, especially with bands like Black Flag, or Flag, or Circle Jerks, or Bad Religion. They can experience what it was like with the music. Maybe not. I mean, if it was what it was like back then, I don't think a parent would bring a kid into a club. But in a sense, the kids back then brought themselves into a club. I mean, there was a band called Mad Society where I think the singer was probably 10 years old or 11. And so again, I haven't really gone to a lot of gigs yet because my whole journey is it's only been over the past couple of years that things really ramped up with my photos. So it's been great though. I'm having the time of my life.
Absolutely. We were recently talking to Doug Carrion over the phone, and he told us about going to this show. Do you recall seeing the Misfits in South Central LA? And could you tell us about the show?
So yes, and I've known Doug for since high school, and so you guys are based where?
Baltimore.
Yeah.
Where are you based out of?
Oh, I'm sorry, Baltimore.
So think of the worst section of Baltimore, or the worst section of Washington, D.C., where it was full of gangbangers and people with guns and knives, and picture a club that's still there. And that is where they held a punk rock show. It's called Bob's Place. And it was in the middle of gang turf between Bloods and the Crips. And Social Distortion played. I think there was a couple other bands, but the Misfits were headlining. And this club was above a restaurant, or no, I'm sorry, it was above a liquor store. And it was terrifying. I mean, because you had the inside was not, I mean, during the show it was, pretty benign, but outside is where it got scary, where there were fights. I guess the story I heard from as the gig was ending, because we had already left. As soon as it ended, we got out of there as fast as humanly possible because there were cars that were broken into. There were a couple stabbings, gangbangers on bad drugs doing bad things. But the story from Earl Liberty, who is He was a bass player in Saccharine Trust. He was the roadieing for the Misfits, and there was basically gangbangers coming back with their guns to do what gangbangers do. So the Misfits, they got their stuff out, and I understand there was a bit of a confrontation with Glenn and Doyle and Jerry, and they got out quick. But luckily, no one was killed. But it was one of the more terrifying nights of my life, by far. So, yeah, I don't know who would put a club in the worst place in LA.
Again, glad we don't have to go through that now.
Yeah, I was gonna say that definitely sounds concerning.
Well, but the experience, that's the one thing is the experiences, and a lot of them I have absolutely no recollection whatsoever. Which is, I mean, there's a bunch of pictures that I took that I don't even remember going to the gig. I don't remember taking the pictures. Hopefully someday as I get older, I will be able to remember. But that was a unique time compared to it that it is now. I mean, I don't know what the scene is like now in regards to what kids are doing and what they're wearing, and just it seems like they're having more fun versus more of a movement.
Yeah.
In the mid '70s, you had the Sex Pistols. Pistols were it was very political. It was very based on class, and a lot of the punks were a kind of working class, and then in LA it was just rebelling against your parents and just the society, and some were very very vocal and very militant about it, but it wasn't. It was fun, but then people were just angry, and that anger turned into when you mix anger and Black Flag and intensity, things got crazy. So their shows were by far the most intense, the scariest, the most violence, the most police involvement. I learned how to run pretty darn fast and hide because they throw down, and but there was never a band. I've never seen a band as intense as Black Flag, especially when Henry was in the band. Well, it's unfortunate what's going on with them, and I don't know. I kind of try to stay out of it, or do my best to stay out of it, because it's there's a lot of legal issues, and but they brought it. They brought it big time, and I even when I was I think I was a junior, through my relationship with Black Flag, that they lived, their headquarters was not far from my house. So I would go there in my first car, a Honda Accord, and I would park it and walk up and down the street, hoping that someone would come out. And, I became kind of a stalker in a sense, but either they felt sorry for me, or they were just, who's this crazy kid? But I ended up, I'm not gonna say becoming friends with them, but they knew who I was kind of able to associate. I did go running one day near the beach with Henry, which I thought I was very, very cool. Running on this, we call the Strand, which would probably be the boardwalk. But I was able to even take some pictures of Henry up close with his tattoos, kind of in, I guess you could say, a modeling pose. But that they helped me get access, and one of them was to Minor Threat. So I flew back towards the end of the summer to DC, stayed with the band at Discord House, was hoping to see Black Flag, probably was involved there, but Henry, from what I understand, fell down some stairs and hurt his knee, so they had to cancel the show. So I did drive down there, and I forget the name of the club. I don't know if it's section or it's something 406, and saw the Minor Threat, a number of the DC bands, and then went to the Wilson Center and saw Iron Cross and Faith and Scream, and I think the Effigies played there, and that was great. Just was a tourist, but was also hanging out with the guys in Minor Threat, watching them rehearse down in the basement. But then when I left the last day, actually one thing is we ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner at, and this is one thing I do remember. We ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner at 7-Eleven. It was across the street. And
sorry.
They drank Coke, not Pepsi, but Coke pretty much all the time. So it was a neat experience. But the day before I left, Ian has a razor that he had bought at a pet store, and he still has it to this day. And they shaved my head, not clean, but they shaved my head. And when I got home, my parents were not happy. So I recommend don't shave your head, because your parents will be really pissed.
That's like when you watch a documentary, that's how everybody starts. Ian's like, I went to a party, they were playing punk rock, and then they shaved my head that night. And that was the start.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was kind of into the straight edge movement too, where I wasn't drinking, wasn't doing any drugs. And so, but it was something that, Ian's an amazing person, and he's got an incredible memory. And it's been really cool to just kind of meet him and reconnect. And he's been a big part of help with my book that's coming out. And it's Minor Threat. I took him at basically 3 shows, but there was one show at a club called Cafe de Grand in Hollywood, where there's some of my best pictures. Because that was the neat thing back then, is there were clubs that were almost like restaurants during the day, and then they, at 10 o'clock or whatever, 9 o'clock, they would turn it into a club. There was a place called Hong Kong Cafe. But if you look at the pictures from Cafe de Grand, I mean, there was no stage. And so the up close, that's the nice thing about back then, is you had that intimacy, and you could be right next to the band. And it allowed for an amazing amount of fan interaction with the band. Some of it, when people were coming up on stage, got a little sketchy, but I think the bands, it's kind of like when Pennywise does the bro hymn and everybody comes up on stage. Maybe not that many, but it was it was an experience. And to be able to now relive that and kind of regress back into who I was back then, it's been fun. I mean, doing podcasts, doing interviews. Hopefully they're going to have an article about me in a German magazine. I was in a Dutch magazine. So, I'm going to take this as far as it takes me. And, having a bit of a cool factor with my kids always helps. You don't want their dad to be a dork.
So, you once took a photo of Keith Morris with a shoe in his mouth, but we were wondering, what exactly is the story behind this?
So the story is, and I think I'll say this very confidently, that's the best picture of Keith Morris ever taken. Period. End of story. If someone has something better, I'd love to see it. But Keith is also part of my book, and that was a show up in Goleta near Santa Barbara, where they played they were headlining for with the Misfits, and Keith liked to drink, and Keith liked to do certain drugs. So he was knee deep in alcohol, and I think someone from the crowd threw it up there, and I don't think he remembers, but I got lucky on that shot, and I was hoping it would be something I could show to Vans to put it into their stores, but he's wearing Converse, but the shoe was a Vans shoe. But yeah, that one, I got lucky on that one. I got lucky on just about all mine, I think. But that one there's going to be a 40th anniversary of Wild in the Streets coming out. I'm not sure when, but it's going to have inside the album, there's going to be a little booklet, and I'm going to have that picture is going to be in the booklet. So kind of cool.
Yeah, I saw that picture and I was like, oh, is that Keith's shoe? And then I saw he had both on his feet.
Yeah, Keith is a character, was a character. He grew up down here, also went to my high school. You know, became good friends with the guys in the Descendents because it was all about fishing. You know, a lot of the Descendants songs are based on fishing, and Bill was a big fisherman, as was Frank, their late guitar player. And Keith's dad owned a tackle shop. And if you read his book, he talks about kind of working there and then going to clubs but the stories about fishing are quite entertaining, and they're also part of their Mr. Bass or Catalina. This is also part of my book. I got some stories about them, and Milo in high school was a straight A student. He was on the cross country team. Bill Stevenson was also a very, very good student. But they went to school all during the day, and then they rehearsed at night. So and it's great that they're coming back and playing hard again. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I saw them in 2017, and that was one of my favorite shows that I've ever been to, because I was right up in front, like against the barrier, like standing on it. And I saw security walk over, and I thought that they were going to be like, you can't stand on that. Instead, they brought a chair and they let me sit like right next to the stage. I could watch Bill like play the drums on it.
Yeah, so if you think about that, there were no barriers, but the barrier back then for some clubs was the stage.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 people. Like I said, it was a few hundred. So you never really got smashed up on the stage. You didn't have to wait all day to get your spot. It was just, a small group of people going in and enjoying the show. Some more than others. But I'm looking forward to seeing some of the new, there's some festivals coming out. There's one up in Sacramento where the Misfits are playing twice, the original group. I'm not sure who the drummer's going to be. Pennywise is playing, and then one of my favorite bands, Metallica, is playing. So that'll be fun. There's another place called Punk Rock in the Park down south from me. I'm going to go there because I want to bring my camera again and start to see if I still got it.
Yeah, they just did that in Arizona, I believe.
Yeah, and that went off. And I know that they're playing. Pennywise is playing over in England in in a I don't know when, but you're starting to see it open up again. And again, I hope they'll do some kind of what they call maybe pop-up shows at a club, or rehearsing, or but I want to bring my camera, and because back then I was just a kid. I was 16, 15, 16, 17 that had no training whatsoever as a photographer. Back then we used film. I did take a class in high school, which helped me learn how to develop my pictures. But and I had at my house, my dad's house, I had a dark room in the bathroom, which I developed all my pictures. But I never had any formal training. It was just something that happened, and people ask, why did you do it? What was your inspiration? What was your I've had people say, so what was your process? How did you frame these pictures? And I'm like, I have no idea. I was just taking, and I was able to weasel my way on to the stage. And because I think I was a pretty decent salesman back then, but it gave you unique access to be on the stage. But also photographers, at least maybe for me, they kind of gave you a little space. I was at an event a couple of weeks ago where Ed Culver, who is, there's the top three photographers. It's Glenn Friedman, Ed Culver, and Alison Braun. They have the majority of the great pictures. Linda Aronow down here also took photos, and I guess I'm part of that crew. But typically they were pretty well protected. Ed did say about someone who just punched him right in the face for no reason, and he took care of the person. Let's just say the person apologized later. But again, it gave you access, and that was the key. It gave you a place to really take photos and be up close. But again, that was not my intent. I never expected this to happen with the popularity of my work, and but at least now with new technology, with Instagram and Facebook, I'm able to get my name out there, and I'm starting to get input and interest from England and Germany and some in South America. And I'm at 6,300 followers, and I'm 3,700 away from 10,000. So, and I think the book, which I'm not going to divulge too much, will help. I think there's going to be a lot of interest, because it's going to be priced at a point that anyone can purchase. And but stay tuned. July is going to be a fun month. But go ahead.
So you had some of your photos included in a documentary called Punk the Capital, but how were you approached to have your photos incorporated?
Well, it was kind of funny, because I went to the showing. They had a preview out here in LA. Went with my girlfriend, and we were. I was also I wanted to meet Ian and reconnect. So that was one of my goals, and also to try to reconnect with Henry. So I was able to connect with Ian, and he was amazing. He remembered everything, where I was from, all the pictures. But we're sitting watching the documentary, which is really cool. If you haven't seen it yet, there was a talk with Henry and Ian about just their experiences. But I'm looking at the movie, and I'm like watching it, and I'm like, wait a minute, those are my pictures. That's my picture. That's my picture. So I was kind of a little bit perturbed, because they didn't ask permission. However, I had learned that they had sent me an email, and I signed a release like a couple years before, and I just totally forgot. So, James Schneider, I think that's his name. I mean, they've done a great show, and I've been very supportive of what they're doing, because it's a very cool movie. Learned a lot about the DC scene that I had no idea. I mean, I knew Minor Threat, Bad Brains, some of the other bands, but the stuff before that I had no idea. And so it's cool. I mean, I've been in a few documentaries. There was Filmage, which is the documentary about the Descendents. I have some photos in that. I was in Get in the Van, which is the Black Flag book, which Henry did not ask for my permission. And so I'm going to try to use that against him to help, but it's not working. He does return my emails, though. And there was another documentary out here about jazz and Hermosa Beach punk. And there was a big, because Dez's family owned a very famous jazz club out here, which is still around. So it was kind of Dez grew up with jazz with his parents, and then the punk rock scene, and Dez was a big part of it, because he's a Black Flag legend and went to school down here. So it's kind of cool seeing, again, adds to the cool factor. And I think I had a picture in a Soundgarden video, but I just cannot find it. But I do remember having it, and I gave a release for it. So hopefully there'll be more. I mean, I think that the punk rock scene is back. I think there's some legs to it, especially when you're seeing, some of the older guys get back in the game. I mean, you're going to see younger bands come up. I think Pennywise and Bad Religion. I think you're going to see more and more. I'd love to see. It'd be great to see Black Flag old school, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. Just too much bad blood, which is unfortunate because we lose out. I mean, again, I was fortunate to see them a ton, but for kids your age and older, to be able to have the original lineup and even Robo's around. I mean, Robo lives in Colombia, but he played, I'm not sure if you've seen the video where he played, he stepped in and they played I think it was a Black Flag song. So who knows, maybe these guys can put put the differences aside and this is what people want. I mean, the punk rock scene is definitely, it's different, but it's out there, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
Especially for kids your age. I mean, you're able to kind of revisit and see fun music.
Yeah, and we were we saw Punk the Capitol like a week from today, I guess. Or yeah, we saw it last week. They did a screening in Baltimore and Jeff Nelson was there. So that was really cool.
Yeah, I have some stuff from Jeff and Minor Threat. They've been great in helping participate in my book, and I got something from Jeff, which is just a gem that is not going to show you or tell you about it until the book comes out. But they've been great. They were, one thing, especially Ian and Jeff, is they've kept notes and diaries of their life of music, and it's unreal. I mean, Ian is a collector of memorabilia, notes, flyers. I mean, it's unreal. So they were great, but because I only took pictures of a handful of bands. I mean, it was Black Flag, the Misfits, Circle Jerks, Descendents, Minor Threat. I have some Dead Kennedys from a gig in '83. Again, some of the pictures from the club in DC, or the club in Baltimore, and then at the Wilson Center. So it wasn't like I had a long career of taking photos. It was a very short period of time, which I think adds to the story. Again, I was in high school trying to at least not flunk out.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for your time. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm glad to see your youngsters. You may need to cut that hair to be a little more. You got to go old school.
Yeah.
But, no, man, I love your hat, and all I can say is have fun, and you guys have been very supportive of the new scene, and again, I think you're going to see more and more bands. I mean, to have a Minor Threat reunion show would be amazing, and who knows?
I mean, Jeff hasn't played in I think he said it was 13 years.
Like riding a bike. And Brian Baker's been with Bad Religion for a long time, but that would be epic. So who knows? Maybe.
But thank you so much. Can't wait to read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys will communicate when it's ready.
Awesome. Thank you.
And out in the public. So just stay tuned.
All right.